Hi, and welcome to another episode of Agile Driven Impact. I'm your co-host, Diane Leonard,
And I'm Eric Leonard.
and we are so happy to have you back with us again. Never a dull moment.
No, not really.
No. And well, today, what are we talking about?
I think we're going to talk about jargon and avoiding it. So, you know, really, Agile isn't about labels. It's about the outcomes you want, clear focus, better collaboration, faster learning, greater impact. Um, you know, Practices, frameworks, and tools, they're just really scaffolding.
Just scaffolding.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, because I'm with you, like no jargon. So tell me what you mean by scaffolding.
Well, uh, they're like scaffolding around a house, right? So if you have a house and you need to make some changes to it and improve something, then sometimes you put up scaffolding and work on the house. But the reality is the house is what you're trying to work on, not the scaffolding. So don't let the scaffolding get in the way of the house. Keep the house. The
Hmm.
house is your organization, your team. The scaffolding is something that allows you to change your organization or your team and to get it set up for success.
So the scaffolding, I'm thinking back to when we built our house. There was scaffolding everywhere. So it could be a digital agile tool, scaffolding, not the house.
Yeah, I
It,
mean, yeah, and frameworks, events, those are all things to help you improve the house, make it better.
so if it's not working perfectly for you, don't throw the house away.
Right.
Maybe consider changing your scaffolding just a little bit.
Well, yeah,
Maybe.
yeah,
Maybe not. All right, we're working on the analogy a little bit
yeah.
there, but I could like I've got a visualization of the house.
Yeah, but you keep the house, right? Don't throw away the house with the scaffolding. So the house is your organization. Help it grow, help it be better. If you need to use certain events and jargon and other stuff from Agile Space, then use it, right? And I think that the important thing is to don't let the house fall apart either. You need to do the construction of the house and keep it running and get going.
Hmm, I like that. I am having just a moment remembering scaffolding in the bathroom, talking to drywallers, and we're not going to go down that path, but when it's not working, make some adjustments. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm definitely into not jargon.
Yep.
I love that. No labels.
Yeah.
But what's like underlying when we talk about agile? We've been talking about agile values
hmm
lately.
hmm
What are the words then that we should use or keep in mind when we're talking about agile?
I mean, I like words that start with the letter E because my name's Eric, starts with an
Eric
E.
starts with
No.
E. Okay, good.
Um, Often organizations shoot for efficiency. They try to get as much productivity out of things, get things done with the least amount of, effort. And that's all fine and good, but really, effectiveness is also what you're looking for. So effectiveness is doing the right things. Efficiency is doing the things right. And if you want to make impact, you really have to do both. And depending on the type of organization that you are, if you're an organization that's out there innovating and working in the explore domain, then you probably need more effectiveness. It's hard to be efficient at creating great new ideas, right? You want to be effective at it. If you're more in the exploit space, using E-letter words, then you probably want a lot of efficiency. You want lean. You want some of the things that come from those types of frameworks and jargon. So no matter what system you're using, you want a method of feedback, right? If you're using lean or something like it, you want a way to see the barriers and the blockers and the waste in the system. And if you're using a more agile method, you might want to see impediments and things that are blocking innovation showing up.
Hmm. So we both come from really different industries, and therefore have a wide range of things that we've seen in terms of the different types of teams in the
hmm
exploratory phase, in the, we'll say exploit, although I'm a nonprofit. So like
hmm
exploit feels funny, but I get it. We're
Yeah.
with the E words.
hmm
But so if we think about across frameworks,
hmm
across tools, so regardless of what the scaffolding is, the house is the team, the house is the organization, what would we say are like some common themes that we've seen all teams do well? Or what are some of those?
Well, I think for a team to do well, for a
Hmm.
team to be high performing, they typically, whether consciously or subconsciously, they need to do five activities, five things that make them to at least have an opportunity to be high performing. And so those five things, the first one is to visualize the current situation. Where am I? What's going on? Where's all the work? The second thing is create focus. So find something that you can say, okay, let's go do this. Right? So find one thing to focus on. The next thing is to establish some way of interacting with each other, right? So making sure that there's a way that we're having a good interaction so we can talk about the work, talk about the value of the work, talk about how we're going to do the work and what we might rely on each other for. So that's three. The fourth one is to actually measure how are we progressing? Are we moving along in the right pace of work to finish the thing on time or to deliver the value when we need to? And then the last thing, we kind of talked about it with the efficiency and effectiveness, is to improve continuously. So have a system that improves the system because then the system will always be figuring out ways to be faster and better and stronger.
Yeah, those are five. I can see how those make sense. And whether we're talking about nonprofits, for profits in the transportation realm, back to our Formula SAE days, or just something that, yes, is in our past, but was something we actually did together again. I'm thinking first Lego League.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that has some really good examples in it. So first Lego League, most of our people listening probably aren't familiar with what those things mean, but first is for inspiration and recognition in science and technology. It's a nonprofit, global nonprofit that inspires young people, typically ages all the way from 4 to 16, to work together on collaboratively solve problems. It teaches them teamwork. It teaches them values like discovery and inclusion, and it combines STEM learning with real world problem solving. So usually there's some type of activity that the teams are doing for uh, real world problem solving. So some real world issue, problem, whatever, and they have to think about and come up with solutions and speak to people in the real space. But then they also have a competition where they compete against each other in real live events like a sporting event. And so this allows the teams that are successful at this, it really does show you that things like visualizing the work, focusing on priorities, collaborating well together, measuring how you're doing, and improving continuously, those are the teams that actually do really, really well in that competition.
Now, speaking of doing really, really well, I feel like we should humble brag, not about us as coaches,
Sure.
but I mean, our two daughters
Yeah.
are, first of all, rock stars, right? We're biased, we
Yeah.
get it,
Sure.
but they were both part of world championship teams.
Well,
Or, well,
they were,
wait, I should back that
well,
one
that's a
up.
little bit over the hill there. I mean,
They were
they
part
were
of
in the world
they were part of
championships.
regional
Yes.
champion.
Yes.
They were regional champions.
Yes.
They got to go to the world championship.
Yes. Yes.
I stand among all of our FSAE memorabilia and
Yeah.
paraphernalia, and I go right to being the world
Yeah, I
champion.
mean
I
that's
that it's
yeah,
what right.
yeah.
But we
They
spent
made it to
years.
the yeah, and you're talking thousands of teams, right? And they made it to be one of the hundred and few teams that were at the World Championships in Detroit, and they those teams that we coached had a bunch of middle school kids on them. They were community teams, and those five activities that we talked about, I think we can run through how those teams use those activities. We coached them to use those activities so they could learn how to be a high performing team as a bunch of kids. Because, kids do school projects at school and other things. And oftentimes kids are frustrated because there's a team member that's not pulling their weight or, there's just a lot of challenges when the team doesn't have the tools in place, the scaffolding in place to build a good house, right? They're like, oh, here's a house and it's falling apart, but good luck, right? So
Yeah.
instead, you got to give them some type of way to help build the house.
Well, and I think, and that was what was consistent across our many years of coaching. And if I think back to the very first year that we did it, we didn't know what we were getting into,
No, not at
right?
all. No.
Seemed like a really good
Yeah.
idea, something we could do with other engaged parents in the
Hmm.
community that said, "Yeah, we'll help do this." And so we order our first kit,
Yep.
and it wasn't that expensive. I think the families combined, we chipped in, it was about
Right.
$200, right?
Right.
So up shows on our porch this big box
Huge box. Yeah. Big box.
with this what's the size of the playing field? I mean, it's huge. It's like
It's a
a
four
sheet of
four
play
foot by 8 foot
a sheet of
playing field.
plywood,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Basically.
And so that's rolled up in the box.
Well, the plywood isn't, but
Thanks. No,
the
the
mat
plywood's not.
is.
The mat that is plywood size is rolled up
That'd
in
be
the
cool if
box.
you could roll up a plywood. But yeah, the
Different
mat.
day,
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
episode. And so within this box is also more Legos than any one child has ever seen on a birthday, a holiday,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
bags and bags and bags of Legos.
Lego, actually.
You're right, they're not plural,
You don't
but
want to get, into some sort of legal trouble.
that's fair. I really don't want that. But
It's always Lego. It's never Legos.
but there's all these bags of Lego so that
It's
they
hard to
can build
say.
the missions, and it is completely overwhelming as a coach trying to figure out how do I help these kids. And then the kids see it and they're like positively overwhelmed.
Yeah, they love it. They want to, the first thing they want to do is build the kits, which actually works really, really well for the first activity that you need to do as a team because building the Legos and putting them out onto a playing field um, helps you visualize the current situation, right? Because then you go, oh, okay, these are all the missions. And it was really cool because the kids would arrive about the same time that they would release a video that shared the rules for the competition and what each mission was worth in points and how each mission needed to be accomplished. So then what we did with the kids is coach them to say, all right, now that you know what all the missions are, go ahead and review them, come back to the next practice, and at the next practice, we're going to go through each mission. And there was a lot of missions, like 25, 30 missions, more than you could do. They have to do those missions in 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while. But they have to try to finish all those missions with a robot that runs autonomously on a field, right? So it's middle school kids programming a Lego robot that they have to build themselves too, by the way, and driving it, letting it drive out onto a field with programmed stuff on it that they program and physically manipulate these missions, right? So 25, 30 of those things that they would have to do. So you have to visualize, first of all, what are all these things, right? And so here's all the missions. Great. Now we know what all the missions are. Then we get into the second activity.
But let's think about then how that idea of laying out the missions, and I get it, most of our listeners aren't going to have all these kits of Lego that they have to put together as a way to visualize their work,
Yeah,
right? That's not
right.
day to day for most of us. So, in our listeners' organizations, in the teams that we work with, it's always about trying to make the invisible visible.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
it might be some digital backlog
yep.
tool, it might be some big whiteboard with sticky notes.
Yeah, map it out, right? Because you can't prioritize and focus on what you can't see, right? It's really hard to focus on something if you don't have anything to focus on. So to even get to that second activity, as any organization, you need to make all your work visible. In the organizations I work with on a regular basis, this can be challenging. It's like people talk about a bunch of stuff in a meeting, and then if you leave the meeting without putting that stuff into a board where you can say, these were the decisions we made, these are the activities we need to do next, then all of a sudden the work just starts stacking up and no one knows
They're
it's
just
there. Yeah.
assigned activities
Yeah.
in some minute meeting
Yep.
document produced by a person or by AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then they're just hidden and they're there for,
Yeah.
yeah. So, all right, we're going to make our invisible work, we're going to
Yeah.
make sure it's visible.
Yep.
Okay. Be inspired by Lego.
Yeah.
Okay. But then once we have our work made visible, what do we do next?
Yeah. And the bridge between visibility and creating focus, which is the second activity, is around priority, right? So if you want to focus something, you need to know what is the thing you focus on. And priority, actually, the roots of priority, the early roots of that word in the English language really is around one thing before another. So you can't have five top priority things. You can only have one, right? So everything should be one in front of the other in terms of priority. So in order to do that, with the Lego League team, what they did was they looked at each mission. Every mission has a points associated with a value, right? Which is in whatever world you work in out there, you have value too. What is your nonprofit's mission? What is your business's return on investment? Those types of things. So they understood, oh, this mission is worth 30 points, and that mission's only worth 5 points. So should they do the mission that's worth 30 before the one that's worth five? So you let them reflect on that, and they thought, oh yeah, let's do the 30-point mission. And they said, yeah, but is that mission, which one's easier to do? Right? And that became a really important conversation of which one's easier. So we used, in our case, a typical sizing method that's used with Agile teams, which is using Fibonacci numbers. The kids loved it because they had little poker playing cards, right? And they would be like, oh, this is fun. And then they would pull out the card and then they'd all show the card at the same time. And if the numbers were more than three sequences apart, they would have a conversation about why one thought it was so easy and why one thought it was so hard. And that allowed them to say, oh, well, yeah, this 5-point mission while yes, it's worth way less points than the 30-point mission, it's super easy. It's like a one pointer. We can just have the robot drive straight at it and come back. Whereas the 30 pointer, they had to like climb a bridge and have a thing that rotates and hits. It's really like, oh, that one's like 30 points of effort. So then you started to get, take the value divided by the effort, creates the focus. So the team then would limit their work in progress and go straight for the thing that had the highest return on investment. And they would first of all start iterating and designing a robot that might be able to do the mission and then get the mission running. And then finally, once they could score the points, then and only then would they move on to the next mission. And that allowed them to take the elephant, break it down into small bites, and then one bite at a time, not try to eat the whole thing at once.
Yeah. And so when I think about in day-to-day teams and in whether a nonprofit or a for-profit organization, that idea of limiting work in progress is hard.
It's really hard.
Lots of things get started.
Yep.
There's lots of things happening simultaneously. And so,
Yeah.
how do you decide in the moment? I mean, I want to focus on all five things in one day,
Yeah.
but what's most important? And that idea of how much effort does it take versus what's the return?
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little grant story for a moment. Please forgive me if you don't mind, because I love grant money, right? And so, if you could, this is something we talk about a lot when we're talking with like different leaders that want to get grant money. They're super excited to get grant
Hmm.
money. And so they're like, well, we're going to go after the $5 million 3-year grant. That's like the Lego League equivalent of like the highest points, the most complex thing that the robot can do, right? It's all these pages and all these attachments. You're like, that'd be cool. But would it be really helpful if for writing this one-page letter and delivering it, to the contact you have at this family foundation, if that got you $100,000, what do you think about that? Oh, right? Like they get excited by the big numbers, the big number of years or months that are funded. And so stepping back to think about not just what is the dollar amount in grants, but also the amount of effort it takes to apply and definitely the amount of effort it takes to report now gives you two dimensions to make choices based on instead of only the dollars drive the decision,
Hmm.
right? That's only one
Hmm.
factor. And so if we're thinking about limiting our work in progress, I think that there's kind of some pretty cool books that help people think about that. I'm thinking Jim Benson.
Yeah, I mean, Personal Kanban by Jim Benson is a really good book for, how do you limit your personal whip? Um, there's a lot of really good agile metrics for predictability by Vacanti is another one. There's a couple different books about things like Little's Law and other factors that say, look, if you want to have this type of cycle time, this amount of time to finish your work, you can only put so much stuff in progress given a certain throughput. So
Hmm.
there are mathematical equations you can even use to say how much whip should we be putting on in play here right now that can help you do that in your organization. And limiting WIP is, put a rule in place. Say, look, we're not going to ever have more than this many things operating at one time.
Yeah, and WIP, work
Work in
in
process.
progress.
Yeah.
Work in progress, work in process. I
Yep.
hear both.
Yep.
But that book by Jim Benson, I love it because it helps you think about it in your day-to-day life.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, I can go apply this at work
Yeah, it's
now,
really great.
right?
It's really great.
Gives you a
Yeah, it
nice
makes a
testing
big
ground.
difference for people.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know me, I love a good book recommendation. So thanks
Sure.
for those. So now we've got our first two steps,
Right.
our main things that we're thinking
Right.
about. And so we built our Lego kit, Lego, not Legos. We've built our Lego kits and we've thought about what is our focus, what is our most important thing.
Right.
And so where do we go from there?
Well, things don't get created usually by one person, right? It takes usually a team. So Jim Benson, who you mentioned earlier, right? He would say that individuals and teams create value. So you have to work in a team to create value. So we want people to work together on purpose, right? So come up with a working agreement with how you're going to work together with people. Is it going to be a brief daily coordination? Is it going to be a short little planning session that you do before you start your work? Are you going to review your work with stakeholders? Are you going to have someone who helps make sure the interactions are good, like a facilitator or a scrum master or whatever it is? It's human rhythms, not the labels, right? Keep flow, clarity, all those types of things alive. And for First Lego League, what we would do with the team, right, is we would have them at the beginning of the practice, they would come together and they'd look at their board and they'd say, okay, what are we going to do on this item? How are we going to work together? Who's going to do the coding? Who is going to do the building of the Legos? Who is going to be the person who puts the robot in the right place and hits start? So they would each have, roles, but they were soft roles. They were roles that allowed them to flex and work in a little bit different ways too. But everybody took a bit of a role. And when they worked on missions, they would have a time box where they would work in their roles and try to get something done by the end of that time box. So, they weren't really using Scrum per se, but they were using time boxes, they were using collaboration, working agreements, and keeping themselves on task.
And, I think it's the purposeful way for the interaction that is so important to what you've said. And so if we think about what that looks like in day-to-day organizations, in our grown-up spaces, when we think about, you said, and I love the phrase, daily coordination. This whole
Yeah.
conversation between you and I started because we're like, Agile is not about the labels.
No.
And the label that gets a lot of people, whether you call it daily stand-up, daily huddle, daily scrum, as currently used in the Scrum Guide, those all people are like, I don't have time for this like daily 15-minute thing. People bristle at the label.
Hmm.
Daily coordination. I'm like, hey, if you'll agree to a daily coordination, I'm on board,
Yeah.
right? It's not about the label, it's about the thoughtful,
Yep.
agreed upon interactions. So when you think about what your team might inherently already have in place, or you might know would bristle at a particular language approach or structure, right? Like it's got to be about what works for you, not necessarily what the label says it
Right.
has to be or what, oh, well, they did it that way, so I have to do it that way too.
Yep.
Purposeful. That's the thing that I always love about the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to focus on healthy, team-focused interactions
Right.
to get to awesome things.
Yeah. Coordinate, plan together, work together, share together, all of that.
Hmm.
So now you've got something that you can see, something you can focus on, something that you can interact with the people you need to interact with. So the next most important, not most, next most important, but the next thing that you need to think about is how, are we making the progress we need to? Because then you are inspecting where you're at and adapting your plan. So with the first Lego League, the team had a score that they wanted to get to. They felt that they could win the regional competition if they got to a certain point scoring, let's say 100 points. So if we can score 100 points in the robot game, we think we could do really well at regionals and maybe even win. So they had a little chart that had a line on it for 100 points. And every week, whatever the robot could do by the end of that session, we put a dot and they drew a line. And so you ended up with this kind of wavy line that started going up towards 100 points. And it was really motivating for them because at first they could see that if they don't get stuff done, that line's going to be pretty flat. And by the date that the competition is, the line wasn't going to be hitting 100. So then they could be motivated to say, okay, this practice, we need to figure out how to score 15 points because then that would make our line go here, which could make this happen. So it allowed them to adapt their thinking, adapt their focus, adapt how they decided what work to do. And it really did make a big difference when you measure progress because it allows you to see what do I need to change if I'm going to make this goal or do I need to change the goal?
Well, and not just that they measured the progress, but that it was visible. It was in front of them
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's a really common utilization of that visual progress towards goal that's used in fundraising organizations all around the world, and that's the campaign thermometer.
Yeah.
How are we doing towards our campaign goal? Are we close or not? And it's not just visible to the fundraising team, they make it visible to the organization and to the community where they're doing it
Yeah.
because they're trying to show we're almost there, help us get there, or like, oh, we got a ways to go. But what's visual about progress? A lot of people now are using digital tools. And so think about what works best for your team, I think is the other thing to remember that like where's your team? Where can they see the progress? How, can you share it on the screen? So like when you're thinking about the Lego story, they were all together.
Yeah.
They had sticky notes, they had a board. There's plenty of teams that are hybrid or fully remote
Right.
where they're not going to have that, right? So somebody's got to help bring that visualization, I should say, of progress to the team so that it's always in front of them. Because it really, you're right, those kids were fired up.
Yeah. I mean, most of these agile frameworks, even goal-based frameworks, throw another book in there, Four Disciplines of Execution,
That's a good one.
to create a compelling scoreboard. If you're playing a sport and you're not looking at the scoreboard and there is no scoreboard, no one's cheering, no one's excited, no one's driven towards a goal. And if you put that scoreboard in front of people before their daily huddle or before their weekly planning session and say, We're either winning or losing, and that scoreboard needs to make that really clear. Are you winning or are you losing at this battle towards the end goal? That motivates either just better decisions or just gives you team motivation or it allows you to pivot if you need to.
Yeah. So you said pivot, and I went right to the Friends meme with Ross, and that hasn't happened to us in the podcast yet. So
I
we're
don't
gonna
even know what that
we're
is.
gonna chalk one up. Yeah, some of my people of my age, yep, loved the Friends TV show. You said pivot, they went Ross.
Mm,
Nope. All right.
no
Well,
idea.
first time I've done it in the podcast. We'll see how
Yeah,
many times I can do it in our entire
maybe.
recording history. So, all right, we're gonna measure our progress
Yep.
so that we could pivot if needed.
Right.
Okay. And then what?
Well, do you
What's I
want to?
guess it's actually about pivoting, isn't it?
Well, sort of. I mean, you have to then try to improve the system,
Hmm.
right? Great teams continuously improve. So the last activity is to improve continuously. So at the end of each practice for Lego League, we knew we needed to get better, right? Because the measured progress wasn't where we needed to be, which often will be the case. And therefore, at the end of every practice, we would reflect as a team. And as a team, we would use a really simple approach called Fists of Five. So at the end of practice, the kids would, uh, depending on how well the practice went, if it went great and they all got along and everything went well and they delivered a lot of value, then they would all put fives up, right? So you say ready, set, show, and they all show fives. But if it was a tougher practice, or even one person had a little bit of trouble in the practice with the rest of the team or something like that, you'd see some people hold up twos and threes. And then we'd talk about, all right, tell us what you saw. And then after they shared their observations for why they thought it was a not as good of a practice, then we would all have the team write down what they thought would be something they could change at the next practice to improve. And so those things would become kaizens or improvement opportunities for the team to get better. And then they would next practice use that thing. If it worked, they would make it a new rule set for how they worked. It would be added to their working agreement, make their agile interactions better so that they could be better the next time. So that's the fifth activity that really great agile uses.
Yeah, and I know I've heard you over the years use that in lots of different settings, right? Like I knew it in the first Lego League setting,
Yep.
but then to hear in like C-suite
Yeah.
conversations, fist to five,
Yeah. I use it with
a
vice
whole bunch of
presidents
Scrum
and
Masters, right? Like it does. I've
C-suite
heard you
people.
use it in
Yeah.
piles
Super
of
easy.
meetings.
It's a super easy method, and people aren't afraid of it, and they can do it quick.
You
And
don't have to have a special
no,
retrospective board or tool
no.
built up.
And it actually inspires one other thing that's really important, which is face-to-face interaction. So if you're all remote, it requires people to be on camera. It's pretty hard to hold up a five if you're not on camera. Now, if you aren't on camera because you're driving your car and you're in the meeting or something like that, then it's okay to yell out a number. I mean, you can do that, but the visual cue of everybody with their hands up is really great. And then you ask, okay, you gave it a three. Why? And that's it's a factual, this is why.
Hmm. And the thing about continuous improvement is that as the fifth thing, I'll be honest, I used to think it was about the continuous improvement of the work. But really, Agile is about the continuous improvement of the work, hard stop, and of how we work
Yep.
together,
Right.
hard stop, right? It's both things happening.
Yep.
And so that's part of why the
Mhm.
fist to five is so important, or any form of like small cycle for reflection in your organization.
Yeah.
Something that's helping you not always to say, okay, here's how we're going to make the grant application better. Here's how we're going to make the next set of brakes on the car better. Here,
Yeah.
right? That's about the work itself, but here's how we're going to make the way we work together
Yeah.
better.
Or this podcast better, even anything you want to make better, right?
We could
Fist
always
five
make
at the
this
end, right?
podcast
How
better.
was today?
That's what
You
happens
do
when you have two agilists
oh
who are
yeah.
married to each other. There is a never-ending
Tricky.
list of
Tricky.
continuous
Tricky.
improvements. Oh, but we won't go down that path today.
Yeah.
And instead, let's think about what we could do, or what any of our listeners could do, like Monday or tomorrow, whatever day it is that they're like, I want to
Yeah.
try some of these ideas. And we're going to give you five.
Yep.
But I want to be super clear. You should not feel pressure to do all five tomorrow or Monday or whatever day. That's a lot of things. Pick one.
Yeah, you should use the second thing we're going to tell you to just focus on one,
That's a
right?
little meta, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
kind of meta. Well, yeah, you're kind of doing a couple of the activities by doing one of these activities. So it is a bit meta, right? The first thing you want to do, not the first thing, but one of the activities you want to do Monday or tomorrow or whatever is make a one-page work map. What are all the things you currently have that you're working on? What are all the things that you need to do? And how difficult are those things to do? Uh, then, or second thing you could do is pick one focus. Focus on one outcome that you want to do, something you want to complete in the next time period that has some impact to your organization, your team, your family, whatever you're using this for.
Caveat on number two. It doesn't mean it's the only thing you're doing probably for those 2 weeks. We get it. Everybody's
No,
wearing lots of hats,
but it's
but it's
something you're going to
the
focus on.
most important thing you
Yeah,
want to focus on when you've got time. That's what you're going to focus on,
right.
right?
Yeah,
Okay, just wanted to clarify that
yeah,
one for our listeners because
yeah,
that would maybe stress some people out.
yeah.
Okay, good. What's another option? Number three.
I mean, do a 15-minute regular check-in with your team. And don't call it a regular check-in. Call it something useful like, hey, we're going to do a coordination meeting or a planning meeting or something that allows you to talk about what you've done, what you're doing, any blockers, what are we going to do next, something like that. So that'd be the third thing you could do.
Probably just don't want to call it water cooler.
No.
That probably gives the wrong message. We're not
No.
about labels, but that one might
Yeah, yeah.
give too lighthearted of a
No,
message.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, number four.
Fourth thing you could do is show your work to someone, right? Share the progress you're making on something, either evidence of something you've completed so you can see progress or estimate of where you are along a timeline towards something that you're getting done. So measure your progress, some measurement of where you're at. And then the fifth thing you could do is find an improvement, one improvement only at a time, and then capture that change for the next cycle. First thing, the nice thing is if you choose one, two, three, or four, then you're kind of doing number five right now, right? You're getting
Mm.
that one improvement that you're going to make. Really, the thing that we want you to take away from today's podcast is Agile isn't about collecting labels. It's actually it's about seeing clearly, focusing wisely on your things that you need to do, or focusing wisely on something that you need to do, collaborating well, measuring how you're doing honestly, and improving relentlessly so that your mission delivers real outcomes for real people.
Mic drop. Easy peasy.
This mic's hard to drop.
Yeah, it would be.
Fixed.
But it is like it's not about the labels.
It isn't. No, it's about creating a real outcome, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for, a real impact, an agile driven impact, even.
I like how you did that. And with that, thank you for joining us for this episode of Agile Driven Impact. Agile Driven Impact is sponsored by Agile and Nonprofits, an organization that is helping nonprofits to create greater change faster, yet at a sustainable pace all around the world. And so great to see you, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye now.